Thank you. So 10 years ago today, I loaded my wife up early in the morning. I took her to the hospital. We go in, we get checked in, we're in the room. They're hooking up all the things that they do to a woman that's about to give birth to a child. And so we go through that process, and I'm starving, because she couldn't eat after supper that night. So trying to be a good husband, I did the same thing. The whole time that we're sitting there, I just keep reminding her about how hungry I am. And she said, for Pete's sake, would you please go get something for breakfast? So as any good husband would do, I went and got in the car and drove to the Waffle House. I ordered the all-star breakfast with extra eggs, cheese, double hash browns with cheese. I was eating like a king. I remember it well. And as I'm sitting there going through the waffle, she calls me and says, where are you? I'm at a 10 and they say I'm ready to start pushing. I said, I'm on my way. I'm at the Waffle House. The phone hung up. I finished my waffle, got a refill of Coke and finished that, and got in the car and headed back. Just in time to walk in and see my oldest daughter be born, Miss Hannah Clay, and she's with us today on her 10th birthday. And she also, last night in the Giles County 4-H speech contest, out of 26 contestants, finished second in her speech. So she had a good night last night. So thank you.
Representative Carringer.
Thank you, Speaker. I want to take just a moment and wish my brother-in-law, Rick Carringer, a very happy birthday today. And then there's a couple of, it's been a sad time in District 16 the past few months. We lost a Knox County Sheriff's deputy, Tucker Blakely, in a domestic assault. He was on his way home. He heard the call, and he met the officers at the home. Unfortunately, Tucker lost his life. He was a Powell High School graduate, married his high school sweetheart, and was just a pillar in the community. I never got to meet him, but I've heard all the wonderful things about this man. And he left his wife and a little 5-year-old son, all because of a domestic dispute, which is what most of our officers are in danger of every single day. Every time they put that uniform on and leave their families, they never know what they're going to face. And this was a true hero. He had just been assigned to the K-9 division, had just gotten his K-9 dog, and was off call, had finished his last shift with being on patrol, and was headed home and heard the call and went to help his other fellow officers. So this is a true hero. We will never forget Tucker Blakely across the state of Tennessee, and especially in Knox County and District 16. So let's take a moment of silence and remember him for what he did every day to protect us, but for his wife and his little boy. Thank you so much.
Representative Hardaway. Representative Douglas does.
Thank you, Speaker. And I'm going to be way out of order. Not that that's anything new, but I want Hannah to stand again. Hannah Clay. And members, I want everyone by voice vote to vote in favor of nicknaming Hannah Clay, Hannah Waffle Clay. All those in favor? It's official. Thank you, Speaker.
Representative Cap.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is also my grandmother's birthday. She turned 86, so happy birthday, Granny Carol.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, last year, my high school classmate, Larry Thorne, was murdered by gun violence. Larry and I went to Mitchell together. He was beloved to his mother, his two brothers, his great-grandmother. Larry worked with pom-pom squads, worked with bands across our city, and was a shining light. And so I would like for us to stand and take a moment of silence for my classmate Larry Thorne, who was murdered by gun violence this day last year, and the thousands of people in our state and across the country who have suffered due to death by gun violence as well. Amen.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of resolutions.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized. Oh. Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions properly filed be introduced pursuant to Rule number 17 and placed on the consent calendar and referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
City Joint Resolutions Congratulatory Memorializing.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all Senate joint resolution congratulatory memorializing line that has to be placed on the consent calendar pursuant to Rule number 17.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Resolutions lying over.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions lying over be referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of bills.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bills 1709 through 1790 be introduced and passed on first consideration.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on first consideration, Senate bills on second consideration, House bills on second consideration.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bills 1535, 1554, 1574 through 1580, and 1583 through 1708 be passed on second consideration to be held on the desk or referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Petitions and memorials, reports from standing committees, reports from select committees.
Chairman Zachary. Oh, I'm sorry. Lear Lambert, you are recognized. Lear Lambert.
Mr. Speaker, to clarify, it's House Bills 1583 through 1708.
Without objection. Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move adoption of the report of the Select Committee on Rules.
You've heard the motion, properly seconded. Any discussion? Lear Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm going to outline just briefly, then we'll take questions and debate, obviously, on these. We are under the rules of the 113th General Assembly. Your Rules Committee met a couple of days ago and has submitted rules for your consideration that would alter those rules in pretty minor fashion. Rule 18 would be amended if passed this floor so that the Speaker shall name the member who shall speak first. So many times in this chamber, there's 10 hands that will go up at the same time. The Speaker looks out and is able to call on those 10 people. Before it was specified in what order. Now just those folks will be called upon in whatever order kind of the Speaker sees them. But it does not have to be the first person to put their hand in the air. It's to ensure everyone gets called on. House Rule 19 We'll deal with transgression of rules by a member. I'm sure we'll have quite a bit of discussion on this today, but it is a much more truncated version of what we had during the special session that would involve a member getting multiple warnings and having multiple attempts to kind of argue their point within the rules, and there would be specific responses to that if a member was voted on by this body to be in transgression of the rules. Item number 22, or rule number 22, would be amended so that no one is allowed on the floor 30 minutes after session, just like we do 30 minutes beforehand. That's just to give you an opportunity to get your things together, head back out to your office or wherever you're going, but that's just another rule change that would occur if this were to pass. Item number 35 is that at no time shall any member enter the House chamber or any committee room of the General Assembly with props. That's already true during session, but that it would be true if this passes, whether we're in session or out. It says item number 41, or rule 41, is there's no crowding about the clerk's desk or speaker's rostrum. That's already the rule. This would just say no member may approach the dais or speaker's rostrum without permission of the speaker or presiding officer. Many of y'all have probably seen me do that over the years. When I go up to potentially, say something to the speaker while he's presiding over the chamber, I will wait at the bottom of the stairs and just kind of wait for him to give me a nod to come up. He may be involved in any number of things, just as many of you that are chairman might. When you're chairing a committee, I always just kind of wait for that nod, then step up, and that's what this means. So rules number 21 and 49 would be changed, and this is a pretty significant change. We've never done it this way before in my 12 years in the House, but we've heard a lot of input from both Republicans and Democrats that they want to make sure that on the larger bills, there is plenty of time for both Republicans and Democrats to get out all the points that you would like to get out. Well, in the structure we've had before, I feel like that has happened, but what this would do is allow for literally the Republican caucus and the Democratic caucus to have equal time. Now, obviously, there are unequal number of members in this chamber. There are 75 Republicans and 24 Democrats, but this would allow for equal time regardless of the disparity in numbers. Each side would have the exact amount of time. So if an hour was set for debate on that particular bill, then each side would get 30 minutes. The leaders would referee that, for lack of a better term, and indicate who would be speaking. So you would be going to your respective leader to indicate you wish to speak. And I'll check with the clerk and they can answer this in a moment, but I do not believe that the 5-minute limit would be applicable during that time. So you could potentially have a member that would speak for much longer than that, as long as it was within the time frame that each caucus had. So hypothetically, you could have one member give a 30-minute speech, but that would eat up all of that caucus's time. But each caucus would have equal time. Floor presentations. 1 minute is what you'll get during welcoming and honoring if this were to pass. That is plenty of time for us to be able to recognize someone in the gallery, recognize someone back home, but let's just limit ourselves to 1 minute. There are days when there's a lot of that, and that's very important, but this will kind of allow us to be more efficient so that we have 1 minute per. I have 1:25 left to go through the rest of this, so I'll speed up a little bit. Item number 83, or Rule 83, would limit to 5 minutes on the floor. This presentation I'm making now, I have 5 minutes for my initial presentation, and then we'll take question and answer and debate for a while. But in committee, this would limit it to 5 minutes for original presentation for your bill. Most members never go over 5 minutes. We have a few of our friends that may go pretty lengthy in this, and I do mean friends, but this would be 5 minutes for that original presentation just to focus on it. Item number 86, one of my personal favorites that came out of committee, when there is a point of order or parliamentary inquiry, that is not an opportunity for us to just continue debate. That is an opportunity to really get an answer to a question you have. If this rule were to pass, if you have a parliamentary inquiry or a point of order, you would rise and say that. Then you would approach the clerk with the two leaders, tell the clerk your question, or the parliamentarian. They will research that question and then get an answer. They will then tell you the answer and then announce to the body both the question and the answer. So that gives them plenty of time to get us a good answer on that, and it also allows this to truly be just point of order or parliamentary inquiry. That is the expanse of it, and I finished with 3 seconds left. Well, then I'll take questions, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Leader, for that explanation. And I know there was a generally lengthy debate in the Rules Committee earlier this week. So I just want to, before I hand it off to my leader, I'd like to ask a couple of questions. On Rule 19 amendment, I would like to know, here we, again, have this concerning issue with silencing members who are ruled out of order. But my question is specifically about how you arrived at the 2 minutes, how that number was reached, how you decided 2 minutes versus 3 minutes versus 10 minutes. If you could please explain how you came to the 2 minute.
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Great question from Chairman Clemens. Thank you very much for that. And the idea behind being called out of order and then being reduced from 5 minutes to 2 is that any member that would be subject, and all of us are subject to this particular proposed rule, that you're kind of the eye of the beholder, right? You hold the ability, as long as you stay within what's being debated and what's the topic of that particular situation, and then you still go outside those guardrails, you're not limited to any other comments after you're ruled out of order, and it's sustained by the body. So you have to know that if you do that, your 5 minutes will be reduced to 2. So the idea of that is to make sure that no one from this body's perspective or the speaker's perspective or any member of this particular situation, of this particular assembly, is going to silence anyone. They have the ability and understand that if they go outside these rules and they are called out of order and then it's sustained by the body, they know that their time is going to be reduced from 5 minutes to 2 minutes for that particular legislative day and then the next legislative day. And if they decide to do it again, to go outside of whatever's being debated on that particular minute, that particular day, that particular topic, then their time can be reduced from 2 minutes to 0 if they're called out of order for a third time and it's sustained by the body. So that's the idea of making sure that each member realizes once they are called out of order and it's sustained by the body, they're not going to be silenced just for one. They will be reduced time to 2 minutes, and they have another ability to say, well, let me make sure I stay within the rules, stay within the debate topic that we're talking about. Then again, if they go outside of that, they could be called out of order again, sustained by the body, and lose their ability to speak on that day.
Representative Clemens.
Okay, thank you. I mean, my real question was not about the reason for the rule or how it's going to be carried out. It was really about how 2 minutes was arrived at, because my concern is the arbitrariness of 2 minutes being pulled out of there. But let me ask my other question before I run out of time here. The question pertains to Rule 49's amendment. And in that issue, there is the possibility that the majority leader, the minority leader, and the sponsor may establish a time limit for debate on any particular legislation. That is very concerning. But my question is, do all three of those individuals have to agree for that rule to take effect, for that provision to take effect? Or can two of the three decide with the sponsor that we're only going to allow a certain amount? But does any one of those have veto power? The rule doesn't expressly say all have to agree before that takes effect.
Leader Lambert.
So the way this is both worded and will work is the speaker may establish a time limit on debate for any particular bill. The consultation with the majority and minority leader and the sponsor of the bill is a requirement of that, but the speaker may establish that time limit.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the speaker can unilaterally decide, and in consultation, that a time limit. So if we have a voucher piece of legislation this year that is a very complex idea and policy, the fact that we can say time limit on that bill is going to be limited to 5 minutes on the House floor is very concerning. So I would love to see that rule be amended to say any of those who are consulted with or with whom the speaker consults has veto power to say, no, I think we need more time on that. This rule should not take effect, even though it's discretionary.
Leader Lambert.
And thank you for those comments. I appreciate it. I mean, there's no, this is a report from a special committee, and so there's no amendments to it. This is a thumbs up, thumbs down vote on the entire package. But it is that the speaker may. Now, obviously, this body has the authority with the 2/3 vote to suspend the rules, and if necessary, we could do that. But I feel confident that the Speaker will consult with both leaders, and we will consult with our respective caucuses, and this all happens before calendar and rules. So it's not like it happens right on the floor at the moment when the bill's up. This happens, hypothetically, a week beforehand, or at least days beforehand. And so if for some reason that needs to be adjusted, we can always discuss it. But the goal of this rule is that we have more time, and specifically that the minority caucus has more time than in a body of 99 where 75 are of one party, 24 of the other. This is actually equal time. So it's not even respective of kind of the math of the situation. This is equal time.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the question that I'm about to ask, I'll assure you I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm not trying to create any issues or problems or whatever. But if it's anything in any of these rules that directly or indirectly set up a situation where any member in this body can be expelled.
Lear Lambert.
So that's covered in the Constitution. Obviously, this body has the ability to be able to do that and has done so in the past. This rule package doesn't deal with that issue. It does allow for intermediary steps before an expulsion decision might be made, but it never takes that off the table because that is a constitutional issue. So that is always an option that is out there, just as censure is always an option that is out there. But this puts in some additional steps that I would consider to be intermediary steps. If a member is maybe not quite to the point of a censure of an expulsion, but has violated these rules, there are additional options for the body to utilize.
Representative Miller.
Thank you for that answer.
Representative Johnson of Knox.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to, I invested in Mason's rules this year, and just because I wanted to make sure that had a good understanding of everything that's possible. And one of the most poignant things was as I read this, the purpose of legislative bodies is to reach their best joint judgment on the questions presented to them for decision. The decision is the decision of the group, not of the individual members. To reach the joint judgment of the body, the exchange of thought and the reasons of the members are essential. That exchange of thought is thorough debate. There will be a question.
Representative Johnson, continue.
Thank you. Where was I? Maybe I'll have to repeat some. Debate is one of the most fundamental characteristics of a legislative body. As a general rule, members of a deliberative body have the right to debate every substantive question presented to the body for determination, but debate upon procedural questions is not a right of the members. And then it reiterates in multiple places. It is a fundamental rule of parliamentary practice governing all deliberative assemblies that the opportunity to deliberate and, if possible, convince their fellows is the right of the minority, which right they cannot be deprived of by the arbitrary will of the majority. That's how I see us as a deliberative body. That's what I want this body to be. I feel that is the American way. And I do not feel that we are always a deliberative body. Do you think that these rules honor the spirit of Masons? Because I don't believe that they do. But is that something you feel that they do?
Lear Lambert.
Yes, definitely. In fact, they allow for additional deliberation that is not available under the current rules. As I've described before, it exactly equal time from both the Republican and Democratic caucuses on different issues and different bills, which I think is important. And you and I have served on and off together for 12 years, and I've always enjoyed robust debate. It's a good thing to have. And so these rules actually allow for more debate, allow for more deliberation, and allow for more voices to be heard, which I think is a good thing.
Representative Johnson of Knox.
Well, I guess what I see is so often people are left with their hand raised, and according to Masons, everyone should be able to express their opinion. And generally, you know, we vote together on probably 80% of legislation. There's not a lot of discussion. But at times when we have questions, and there's been many times where perhaps I've spoken, and then you went on to talk more about the bill, just like when one of the members was explaining the bill to another member just a second ago, it made me think of another question. And so typically if I've already spoken, I don't get to speak again. But a lot of times I really need clarification on that new item that just came up, but not able to do that. I don't understand why allowing each member that wants to speak the time to do that, because it's rarely that it's a very long list. But when it is, I believe we should be able to have that discussion. So in the spirit of why we're here to work for Tennesseans, I think that we should allow more deliberation. So
Leader
I'll be
Lambert.
voting against the rules.
Leader Lambert.
And thank you for those comments again. Again, this allows for more deliberation, and there's nothing in here that limits the number of hands that can be called on or number of members that can be called on or called on twice. But there are always circumstances that can occur where, you know, it gets to the end of the debate, and I too have had things that I wished I could have still said on different bills, but it just didn't happen. So this allows for additional debate. It allows for, hopefully, more robust and respectful and deliberative debate. We're in the middle of a 2-year session. If these rules are adopted, we'll see how they work for the next few months. But my hope is that it will very much engender much more deliberate debate and enhanced debate than we've had in the past, that we've had quite a bit of that. Thank you.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the 2 counselors that are standing in the well there. Hope I'm not impugning you by calling you counselors. My 2 things. One is, you know, we have in Rule 19 where if members are off topic or out of order, you have the graduating steps to the point to where, you know, they won't be able to speak again, right? And so if that rule is inside of this rule package, then there's really no need to limit debate, because those members that are staying on topic, you know, they're going to speak their piece, they're going to ask the questions that they want to ask, and then we're going to move forward. And so I would really like to see these time limits or the ideas of these time limits on each subject removed. I remember when I got here in 2011, you know, on this floor, we literally would have a full debate about every piece of legislation that would come forth. The majority of the time, I would say at least 75, 80% of the time for those that were here when I got here in 2011, there was hardly any or very little debate on most of the bills. And so the idea of having a time limit on any piece of legislation, I think is a bit stifling and a disservice to, you know, all of the constituents of all of the members that are present in this chamber. And so I really want us to get at some real consideration, because under Rule 19, you have the tools that you need to make sure that debate continues in the manner that it needs to continue in. So I would really like us to get at some real consideration. The other thing is this, also under Rule 19, and I think this came up in debate in the Rules Committee. You know, if a member is ruled out of order or off topic, I'll wait. Okay. Thank you. If a member is ruled out of order or off topic, and we have, as a body, have to vote on whether we agree with that or disagree with that, then I think it's important for us to be able to be told where the member was off topic or out of order so we can make an informed vote. And I think that was left outside of this rule, and, you know, by a simple amendment, because it could be any member that's ruled out of order or off topic, which affects their ability to continue to speak on the issues. And I understand that. We want everyone to stay on topic. I get that. But we at least need to know where the out of order is coming from or why the member was ruled off topic so that we can make an informed vote as to whether we agree or disagree.
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for your comments, Representative. I really appreciate those, and I understand that. And we have a body of 99 people. You have 99 different opinions, maybe 99 of the same opinions, 99 people that want to speak on a particular topic. Our rules are designed to limit that so you can make your point, your assertion on what you said, the actual topic that's being debated. And you even said, you get that. You get that. I think all of us get that the topic that we are debating is the topic that we're discussing. So what happens? What's the suggestion when we have members that don't ever want to be on topic? In a baseball game, we have an umpire. We have someone at bat. When you get 3 strikes, you're out. You don't get to turn around to the umpire and say, you know what? I want 4 strikes. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving this batter's box. I'm not stopping what I'm doing, playing this game until I get 4 strikes instead of 3. What happens? That umpire would probably end up throwing that person out. Right? That's the rules that are in place when you get off topic. You get that. You said it. So that's what these rules are designed to do, is to effectively promote the democracy that's debated in this House. Out of time.
Out of time. We can add back to the list if you want to. Representative Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Oh, goodness. My apologies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members, there has been much conversation over the last year in this body about the People's House. There has been much conversation about the limiting of voices of the people and even representatives in the People's House. And actually, Mr. Speaker, I agree, and I agree completely. These rules are necessary to ensure that every single member on this body, the 99 people representing this House, representing 65 to 70,000 people at home, have the opportunity to be the voice for their constituents. Because voices have been silenced, Mr. Speaker. There are many in this body that monopolize the time, that silence the voices of the vast majority of districts across this state. And many times rhetoric is thrown around about we're silencing the voices, I don't get a chance to speak, you're limiting debate, you're cutting off time. I think it's important, Mr. Speaker, that instead of assuming we know what the numbers are, that we actually look at the numbers. And fortunately, the clerk keeps those numbers for us. So for context, I think it's important for the people of the people of Tennessee, the media, and the members of this body to know how the time has broken down, and over the last year, who has spoken the most on this House floor, who has monopolized debate on this House floor and silenced the voices of the vast majority of this body, both Republican and Democrat. So, Mr. Speaker, I thought it was important to have this list, and I've got a couple of minutes, so let me just give you some context. So one of our newest members from Shelby County holds the time record for speaking on the House floor at 3 hours and 43 minutes. The top 9 speakers on the House floor over the last year are all from the minority party. You've got Shelby County with 3 hours and 43 minutes, Davidson County 2 hours and 16 minutes, one of our newest members from Davidson 2 hours and 12 minutes, from Knox County an hour and a half. Shelby County, I could go on and on. There is not a Republican that shows up on this list until number 10. And so the clapping reiterates the point that there is not a concern and a respect for the other members of this body. There is not a concern and respect for the other Tennesseans in this body. And I need people across the state to recognize and see that, because the numbers speak for themselves. So, Mr. Speaker and Majority Leader, because of the trajectory that's changed over the last year and a half, because those that come here to promote their own agenda push themselves, represent themselves, and lift themselves up versus being concerned about what goes on the rest of the state and ensuring everybody has a
Hey,
voice.
Representative Zachary, I appreciate that. Let's get back to the rule topic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll close with this. Members' voices are being silenced. We need these rules to ensure everybody on this House has the opportunity to speak, and that those who are here to monopolize don't have the opportunity to do that any longer, so we all have the opportunity to speak and represent our districts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question about rule number 20, and I think you may have addressed it earlier. Just want to make sure that as a member presents his bill and has the limit of 5 minutes for explanation, that there still will be opportunity if that member is asked a question. It's on, I'm sorry, Rule 83, Uniform Rules of Committees, number 20. And it says, when presenting a bill or resolution to a committee or subcommittee, the sponsor should be limited to 5-minute explanation. Just want to make sure that if that member is asked another question or a question, they will still have time to answer that question, even if they're beyond their 5 minutes.
Lear Lambert.
Absolutely. That is for the 5-minute presentation, just as I did up here on these rules. You know, I had to keep it within 5 minutes to just describe kind of the initial, and then we are now in virtually unlimited question and answer. So this doesn't affect any of that. It's just the initial 5-minute presentation.
Representative Love.
Thank you. And follow-up question. Number 21 says, except as stated in the foregoing rules, the rules of the order of the House of Representatives shall apply. Other special rules shall not be adopted by committees. Just want to make sure, does the chair of the committee have the prerogative to limit debate of a member or a question? Because I think in Rule 21, there are limits of debate on the House floor. So will a member in a committee have their opportunity to ask questions limited or have their debate limited?
Lear Lambert.
No, not at all. This doesn't change any of those procedures.
Representative Love.
Thank you so very much. And even though I do not agree with all these rules, hearing what is being said, it is my hope, members, that if these rules are adopted, that there will be a decrease in the calling of the question when members are engaged in debate, that we will allow members to have debate and answer questions and ask questions, because it is a bit disturbing when members are in the process of trying to get answers and then a question is called and debate is ended. And so even though I don't agree with all the rules that are being proposed, it's my hope that going forward we will see a limit or a decrease in the number of chances or opportunities for someone to raise their hand and then in the interim of that, in debate. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members, for hearing me out. On a personal note, when we talk about rules, I had a chance to go back and look at my father's old rule book from when he served. Let us make sure that as we apply these rules, that it's not in a punitive manner, but allows members to really have conversations and have debate about the rules and about the laws that we're proposing. Thank you.
Representative Dixie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I look at some of these rules, and I'll get to a question really quickly, that I want to make sure that the rules take down the temperature in here. The temperature is rising, and let's not start off the way that we're starting off now. Remember, I asked us to look at these rules. Let's be fair to each and every one of us. We all came up here to represent our constituents, and my time is important just as everybody else's time. And we need to respect that. And the sponsor, I and the co-sponsor, I'm sure you would agree that we are a deliberative body. We're here to debate things. That's what we do. And I think that we should take as much time, because what we do here impacts people's lives. And we need to make sure that we get it right and take the time to get it right. So I believe that limiting debate is detrimental to what we have going on right now. Let's think about what we're doing. If it's not important enough for you to sit here and listen to someone it's very important to them to have an explanation or to make a comment about it, if it's not that important to you, then you should leave. no one forced any of us to take this job. We took it because we wanted it. And I think that our job is to get it right and take time. So my question to you is, why are we limiting debate if we're a deliberative body and our premise is to debate bills?
Leader Lambert.
So a very straightforward question, or very straightforward answer on your question. This expands debate opportunities. It does not in any way, shape, form, or fashion limit debate unless a member breaks the rules. And my colleague gave an example earlier of, if you're playing in whatever type of sporting event, there are rules within that type of event that allow it to progress to. I mean, you know a first down is going to take 10 yards. You know a touchdown is in the end zone. I mean, if that shifts or if people don't follow that, then it's pretty difficult for folks to be able to participate in that. So here on the House floor, we have rules that allow for an ordered democracy to proceed and for that exact deliberate debate to occur, which again, I and you, we have had several debates over the years, and I've always enjoyed those. I've learned stuff from you. I hope you've learned stuff from my perspective as well, because we represent different districts. You represent the same number of people that I do, and their voices are just as important as the voices of the individuals I represent. So the goal of this is to expand debate opportunities, not in any way to contract.
Representative Dixie.
And I remember the analogy that my colleague gave, but there's one distinction that I want to make clear. His analogy was about a game. We're here to take care of business. Two different distinctions. So we cannot compare one to the other. This is apples and oranges. Let's be fair to each other. Let's take down the temperature, and let's work with each other, because I think that's what we all want to make Tennessee a better place for everybody.
Leader Lambert.
Thank you, and it was just an analogy. This is not a game. This is extraordinarily serious, and I have already filed bills this year that will hopefully literally save lives in this state, and I'm sure you may have as well already. But the analogy can be true for business or for a courtroom. I mean, we're both attorneys. We're two of the, there's not a lot of attorneys left in the chamber. There used to be a lot. But when I step into a courtroom, there is an orderly process so that my client is able to be represented well. I know those rules before I step into the courtroom, and I'll argue within them. If I'm outside of those rules, there are penalties to that. Sometimes severe penalties, sometimes minor penalties. The goal of this is so that deliberative debate can occur on those extraordinarily serious issues. This is not a game. This is extremely important service for all of us. This expands debate opportunities to all. And specifically, quite frankly, to the minority party. It helps that voice be heard equally on certain bills because we have heard from some that had not occurred in the past. So I want to make sure that it does. And I think that's a goal for all of us, is to make sure that all voices are heard in this chamber.
Representative Pearson.
Okay. Thank you, Speaker. The creation of new rules that root or that are rooted or stem from injustice still are unjust rules. Rules meant to penalize and meant to attack other members. Just because they become rules don't make them right. But they do become cover for decisions that get made that still will be inequitable and still will be unjust as they are implemented. Here are a couple of changes that I take issue with. But first, there was a representative who mentioned that I spend as much time as possible advocating for District 86. And I want to thank you for that, because my constituents' voices do matter. My constituents' opinions do matter, and any opportunity that I get to advocate for the issues that they care about, whether that's gun violence or the environment or any of the usurpations of democracy, I'll stand here and speak about it. So I appreciate that I am an advocate for my constituency. Rule 18 puts more power into the hands of the Speaker while reducing power of members. We just saw even now, no member shall be recognized by the speaker unless the member addresses the chair from such a member's desk. The member who shall first rise is entitled to speak first, but when two or more members shall rise at the same time, the speaker shall name the member who shall speak first was the rule. But now, even if you raise your hand first before some people call the question, the speaker is now going to be allowed to silence the members who might have differing opinion, which we've seen before. Looking at Rule 19, one of my colleague, you mentioned that we need to have democratic debate in this House. Democratic debate means the sharing of different ideas from different perspectives and different districts, and listening to those folks with a willingness to be changed, with the willingness to be humble and realize you don't know everything, and maybe there are some perspectives in places you have not been, in communities you have never visited, that are worth hearing when you bring forward legislation. So I agree. We need democratic debate in this House. So why in Rule 19 does it say in the middle section of the House shall, if appealed to, decide the case without debate? Why in Rule 35 does it say when the reading of a paper is called for and the same is objected to by any member, it shall be decided by a vote of the House, which is supermajority Republican, without debate? If we're going to be a democratic debate is supposed to be in this House, let's amend those rules right here and include debate. And I'm fine with Leader Camper and Leader Lambert being the ones to decide what those rules are, but you cannot have both, where you claim to care about more members' voices being heard, but then the speaker is the one who decides who's out of order, and then there's no debate about it. You can't say that you want to have the minority party listened to and then have your own members calling the question before discussions. See, I have been expelled from this House advocating for my constituents, advocating for the issues that matter. And during that expulsion, many of you stood up talking about how we have to have more conversation. We need to be able to listen to one another. We need to be able to share issues and talk about issues in this House. But then you put forward rules to reduce the ability of members to speak on those very matters, passing rules that say without debate. Democracy is not what you get to turn it into. It is about the ideals that every voice, every constituency matters and deserves to be heard, because we didn't send each other here. Our communities and our districts did.
Leader Lambert.
Thank you for those comments. And the people of Tennessee chose the members of this body. They chose 75 Republicans and 24 Democrats. They get an opportunity every other year. I trust those people to make that decision. I trust us to work within a framework where we respect one another and we have this type of debate. And these rules expand opportunities for that. But I do want to share just one quick thing on these rules. As we're discussing rules and debate, when I was a freshman, when I first came into this body 12 years ago, it was kind of a surreal circumstance, and I'll share it here just briefly. I met a gentleman by the name of Mike Cornell. He had been a representative here for decades, and he was cleaning his office out. He had either retired or lost an election, and he was leaving. I was in a brand spanking new suit and was pretty tickled to be elected for the very first time, and he was in a suit that it had rips and tears and tatters. And as he's cleaning his office out and I'm putting mine in, it's like late at night at 11 o'clock or something. And this was the advice that that gentleman gave me. And I've not heard from him since. This is the first time I've told this story publicly. He didn't give me advice on perfect oratory or exactly how to draft a bill. He just looked at me and he said, look, my advice to you is take care of your people. And I've tried very hard to do that. When I get calls from constituents, when I have a problem that I think Representative Garrett or you or someone else may have expertise or knowledge in, I try to reach out. And none of that's done on the microphones here on the floor. The debate we have here is extremely important. But for every single one of us, and even those members that rarely ever speak on this floor, their work is so important to the people of this state. So while yes, debate is important, I would encourage all of us to continue to take care of our people and do the work off the floor that makes good debate here and good policy here. Spend more time talking to our constituents than we do yelling at one another. And that, I think, will do what at least Representative Cornell, the advice he gave to me of just take care of my people. And so I'm going to continue to try to do that. I'm confident that you will as well. And as we do that, we will have respectful debate on this floor that will help us take care of all of the people in Tennessee. So thank you for your comments. I appreciate them today, sir.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. The more time y'all take to get to me, the more reading I do. This time I asked AI to assist me. I'm going to read this and then I'm going to comment on it. But before I do, I've replaced Mike Cornell, and you're right, he was a gentleman, a scholar, and quite the statesman. The generative AI response says, in a democratic society, the principle of majority rule ensures that the rights and interests of minorities are protected, even if a majority supports a decision or policy. This principle emphasizes the importance of equality, inclusivity, and respect for diversity. In the United States, rules are designed to protect all members of society, including minority groups. This applies to societal structures like voting and legislative procedures. AI may have gotten that from some of my writings. I'm a firm believer that rules are meant to protect the rights and interests of the minority. Whether you're talking about an ethnic or you're talking about a political minority, as we have here in the House. I have a couple of specifics if the sponsor would be willing to engage. The way that the rule number 19, probably like the preacher say, everything's been said about that, just everybody hadn't had a chance to say it. How do you get recognized by the speaker when you're doing a call to order? Are you to announce your intentions or wait to be recognized?
Representative Garrett.
Representative Hardaway, I don't mean to. Are you under Rule 9? Which rule are you referring? Rule 19 doesn't deal with how you're recognized.
Representative Hardaway.
Correct. That's why I had the question. It's transgression of rules by member. On my paper, it's the fourth line, unless permitted to explain, and the House shall, if appealed to, decide the case without debate, et cetera, et cetera. But in order for the member to be recognized in the first place, how is it that the speaker shall acknowledge the member? Wait for the speaker to be called by voice, or wait for the speaker to see your hand?
Representative Garrett.
The portion of Rule 19 that you're referring to is the current rule. That's not changed. So the subject matter of Rule 19 is under the impression that the member has already been recognized as part of a debate if it's a bill, a resolution, amendment, etc. So the portion that you were quoting under Rule 19, that first paragraph, is the current rules.
Representative Hardaway.
All right, I'll start at the beginning of 19. Any member is whom I'm asking the question about, who in speaking or otherwise transgresses the rules of the House, the Speaker shall, or any other member, may call such transgressing member to order. That's what I'm asking about. How is that member to be called to order? Is it by voice, or is it by hand signal to the Speaker for recognition. That's what I'm asking about.
Representative Garrett.
Currently, which this is the current rules, if we're acting under what is current and another member wants a point of order, currently they would have to get the attention of the speaker and be called upon by the speaker for a point of order and then make any objection they would to if that member is transgressing the current rules. But that's the way the rule is currently. We have a rule that would change that process that's proposed if there was a member asking for a point of order or a parliamentary inquiry. But right now, under the current rule, if you are recognized and I'm in the well and someone wants to call you to order, whether it be the speaker at the speaker's discretion or a member on the floor, that member would need to stand up, raise his hand, be recognized by the speaker to say, I have a point of order. Then it'd be at the discretion of the speaker to recognize that person while you, in this hypothetical, would be speaking to raise that point of order. That is what the current rules do.
I will have to add you back to the list, Representative. We're past that first initial 5. Sorry. Moving on. Representative Cochran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative, for presenting the rules package this morning. Really just want to offer a very brief statement of support for that rules package. You know, we're all familiar, when our nation was first formed about, Benjamin Franklin comes out of that initial meeting, someone asks him, what type of government do we have, right? He says a republic, if you can keep it. And I just want to remind everyone that for a republic to function properly, there must be order. There must be rules of decorum. And that's to ensure that the voices and opinions of all Tennesseans are heard through their elected representatives. And let me repeat that, to ensure that all voices are heard. Not just the ones that scream the loudest or the ones that bring a bullhorn. All voices in this body. And just in case there's any confusion in this chamber at all, what happens on this floor is not what a democracy looks like. It's what a republic looks like. And I can assure you that we are going to keep it, and we're going to do it through decorum and through rules. Thank you very much.
Leader Lambert.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just appreciated the Ben Franklin reference there.
Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, I witnessed something that really appalled me that are related to these rules. Myself and the Republican Majority Leader, my friend William Lambert, were trying to get on the elevator, and the Speaker's security put his hand up to Lambert and said, you can't get on with the Speaker. He pushed our Majority Republican Leader and said, you cannot get on with the Speaker. And so I want to make clear that these rules are not about Democrats versus Republicans, but it's about each of us as members and a Speaker who is drunk with power. In these rules, a phrase that keeps
Representative
occurring.
Reagan, you're recognized. Point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Please use your microphone, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I asked the clerk to read from Mason's manual about disparaging comments for other members, and I herewith call the gentleman from Davidson County to order.
Mr. Clerk. Representative Jones, you're not recognized to speak. I'd ask you to refrain. Mr. Clerk. Representative Reagan.
Thank you. To aid the clerk, Mr. Speaker, I refer him to Chapter 13, Section 121, Number 2.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the section that the member requested, Section 121-2, when disorderly words are used by a member in debate, notice should immediately be taken of them by the member objecting, and if desiring the words to be taken down, the objecting member should repeat them exactly as that member believes them to have been spoken. If of the opinion that the words are disorderly, the presiding officer should direct that the chief legislative officer take them down. If of the opinion that the words are not disorderly, the presiding officer may delay the order. If the demand is supported by additional members, the chief legislative officer should be directed to take down the words as restated by the objecting member. If the demand is not so supported, the objecting member may move to have the words taken down.
I'm sorry, we're on this one. We're not doing additional ones. I appreciate the effort, though. Sorry, sir, we're dealing with this. Representative Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I neglected to mention in my request that Rule 19 be invoked as well in relation to that.
Thank you, Representative Reagan. Mr. Clerk, can you read Rule 19?
Mr. Speaker, Rule 19, transgression of rules by a member. Any member who, in speaking or otherwise, transgresses the rules of the House, the Speaker shall, or any other member may, call such transgressing member to order, in which case the member so called to order shall immediately sit down, unless permitted to explain, and the House shall, if appealed to, decide the case without debate. If there be no appeal, the decision of the chair shall prevail. If the decision be in favor of the member called to order, such member shall be permitted to proceed without leave of the House. If otherwise, such member shall not be permitted to proceed. In case any member objects and continues without leave of the House, and if the case require it, such member shall be liable to censure the House.
Representative Reagan has called for Rule 19 and called to order. That puts us on the board. We are voting. A yes allows the representative to continue speaking. A no vote calls him to order, and we move to the next person on the list. Mr. Clerk, take the vote. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 20, 68 nays.
We move on to the next person. Representative Hawk, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm always intrigued at the mention of the rules throughout the decades. We heard one of our members talk about family members serving in this body, and I'm reminded of the rules that we've gone on and that have gone on over the decades. And historically, a Speaker of the House who has been duly elected by this body on a vote of this body, first day of session, when the General Assembly begins, has broad discretion and respect on operations of this House. Not blindly followed, I'll remind you, but definitely respected. Now, for whatever reason, we're having to put on paper what we've already done throughout these decades. And I challenge folks to go back and look what's happened over the last 154 years and see if there's anything different. These rules that are now having to be put on paper now are no different from some rulings that we've seen from prior speakers. So I challenge you to go back and look at actual activities that have occurred and learn from that. Learn from the history of what we've seen throughout the decades. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members.
Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And first of all, I'd like to request, I kind of like that little list the gentleman from Knox County had. If that could be provided to the entire body, I'd appreciate it. But first and foremost, the rules are there to protect the minority. That's what they're designed to do. I just want to know if you don't believe that, then I hope you believe the rules are for the entire body and not designed at the minority. I just think we're here. These distractions, I'm kind of glad this happened right before I got to speak. Are we here under these rules to address issues? Or are we going to let things like that distract us from the issues? I'm here to solve big problems for this state. Many of you disagree with what I propose, and that's fine. That's why we have debate. But we all agree we've got some big things that need to be addressed in this state. And I'm sick of the show. I'm ready to do some work. I'm ready to talk about some issues. I'm tired of hearing Masons and who can, outdo the other, who can try to silence this member. I don't know where I'm at on that list he's got. If I'm up near the top, unfortunately, it's probably not doing anything good. It's probably having to defend my county and my district, which I don't take pleasure in. Either I'm having to defend my county or I'm having to defend public education. That's not fun. So I've spoken more before this session with members on the other side of the aisle about pieces of legislation I think move us down the road a little bit. It doesn't give me everything I want, but I think it accomplishes things for the betterment of Tennesseans. But at the end of the day, like I said, I'm here to address tough issues. I'm not here for distractions. I'm not here for people to use distractions as excuses to not address tough issues. So we all need to learn how to get along. I don't agree with some of the language people use. I know you don't agree with a lot of the language I use. I get upset in here. Some people got to learn better language. Some people got to get a little bit more thick-skinned. But let's do something. Let's quit this squabbling that's on video, on camera for all of the state, all of the world to see us acting like petulant children. And please call me out of order. But let's do something. You know, there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed. You know, I don't agree with a lot of his rules and policies. You know, I'm reading the TCA right here, the duties of the state patrol. There ain't nothing in there that says they need to keep citizens away from me as I walk in these doors. I don't agree with a lot of things. He's a speaker. He makes them. He's going to have to live up to them, and he's going to have to face the people for his decisions. That's fine. I'm going to call him out if I disagree with him. He knows I'll call him out if I disagree with him. You know, neither one of us have a very good poker face. You know, he sits up there making face. I'm sitting back here making faces. You know, but let's get something done. And before I end, because I know if I ever stop while I'm speaking and ask a question, you know, people use all my time. So my question to Leader Lamberth is on when we address 60 minutes to both sides, are we going to allow people to call the question during that time period?
Representative Mitchell. I'm sorry, Leader Lamberth. No, sorry, your time just ran out.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. The representative that just spoke, he and I did come in together, but we've never been mistaken for one another, so I'll choose to take that as a compliment. The previous question can be called. I would ask for both caucuses to resist that impulse if we are under a rule that allows for equal time on both sides. So I don't want to speak for Leader Camper, but I'm sure both of us will make every effort to ensure that when we've agreed as caucuses that we're going to have equal time, that it would take something pretty egregious to occur for a previous question to be called during that time period. It's kind of an agreement by both bodies that, look, that's the time period that's going to be utilized for that bill. So previous question is still available, but I hope it would never come to that, sir. And thank you for your additional comments. I do enjoy the democratic process. We've been at it for quite some time now. I've heard you give some pretty spirited debates and speeches in this floor, and I quite frankly, my memory of it, you've almost always kept it within bounds of the rules while still having passionate and spirited debate. And I think that's the goal for all of us, is to make sure we get to those good decisions that positively affect 7 million folks in this state.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just wanted to take an opportunity to say appreciate the Rules Committee and the work that they've done. I think it's important that most of the members know that there were other rules that were submitted to the committee, that the process is one of process that we're following the rules. The rules are really important. In my household, we have rules, and you violate those rules, then there are repercussions for it. And so we adopt these rules in order to make sure that everything that we do in here brings honor and respect, not just to the chamber that we reside in, but the offices that we hold. I'm excited to hear, and I appreciate the representative from Knox County sharing with the public the amount of time that people are getting an opportunity. I look forward to being able to speak more for my constituents there. I'm also happy that we were able to do that because my colleague from Memphis, who has been saying since the time he walked in the door that the rules, that he was being snuffed out as it related to his voice. I was shocked to hear that he got to speak more than anyone else and then he admitted that his voice had not been snuffed out. And so I like Representative Love, my good friend. We used to say back when things were a little different that love is in the house. And so it still is. And so I look forward to working with my colleagues to apply these rules evenly handed, but also be able to restore some modicum of decorum that I feel like that in the 13 years that I've been here that we've lost. And so it's my hope that these rules further give us the guides that we need in order to operate in a way that brings integrity to the House, integrity to us as individual members. If we ever lose the gravity of the situation when we walk up these steps into this chamber, it changes the tenor of the way that I walk, the way that I think, because of the many hundreds of thousands of members that came before us here. I think these rules further protect what it is we're trying to do and preserve that debate so that all members can participate. And so thank you for these, for the rules leader and the committee for bringing them here.
Leader Lamberth.
Sir, thank you for those comments, and thank you for your 13 years of service and hopefully many more years to come. I love hearing veteran members, as several have come up. I still listen to many of you that were here when I came in, and you welcomed me in as a new member and helped teach me those very rules and the way to be successful in this body. And I've always tried to kind of pass that on as well as we help each other and lift each other up, because it's a legislative body. It has rules, it has procedures, it has ways to be successful within that legislative body. And so, sir, I appreciate your comments, and more than that, I appreciate you and every other member that came before me who has laid a great base to help teach me how to operate within those rules as well.
Representative Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate you recognizing me. Members, I have multiple problems with these rules. And I guess I'll start off by saying that I have a problem with the fact that we're even here going over rules for this year after we've already adopted rules to start off this session of our General Assembly. There have been multiple historic debates in this chamber. Discussions about segregation, the women's right to vote, even the income tax. And this body never went back and changed the rules halfway through. The reference was given to baseball. And you're right. As long as I've been playing baseball, it's 4 balls, it's 3 strikes, it's 9 innings. It seems to me if we had to say over baseball, it'd be 1 strike and 5 or 6 balls, depending on which team you were on. The fact that we are here debating these rules again is unfortunate. One of the things that I have seen is the fact that I'm having to continue to speak without asking questions, and I'm going to get to a question, but I hope moving forward we can stop this practice of when a question is asked, filibustering and using our precious time. Because it is important to have a robust back and forth debate. I'm going to ask a series of questions for the leader here, and I'd appreciate his answer at the end of my questions, but I'll start off with Rule 19. And my question there is something I asked during our extraordinary session. If a member is ruled out of order, is that member no longer allowed to go into the well in that time period and present their bills? Rule 41. Cannot approach the speaker or the dais. Are members still allowed to present or to approach the well? Because there's a common practice of people going to talk to other people who are in the well that might be presenting a bill to ask questions or to give them feedback. The 5-minute committee rule. If we really value committees and we go and we hear robust laws in our committees, how can we limit that sponsor describing that bill to 5 minutes? Some of these bills are dozens and hundreds of pages. They can be very lengthy, and limiting that to 5 minutes is concerning. I already think there is confusion over the parliamentary inquiry rule with Rule 83, Rule 86. If I was to rise and have a parliamentary inquiry, am I recognized, or do I have to go to both leaders and then be recognized? These are just a few of the concerns I have. But again, back to my greatest concern is that here in this chamber, we have debated some of the most significant pieces of legislation, and we've never had to go back and change the rules with such significance as we are having to do or wanting to do. It's not my will to do this. I'm against these rule changes. But I'm sure they're going to pass, and this is going to be what we're held to. And one final question that I have is actually thinking back on my time here in this chamber, is a rule that I don't see in these rules, and I did not present this to the Rules Committee, but I think it's something we should consider, is looking at the process for holding the board open for votes. We're going to be taking up legislation this year that deals with an issue we've dealt with before. The board was held open for an inordinate amount of time, and we need to address that and take our votes timely.
Leader Lambert.
My fellow classmate from the class of 2012, there are several of us that have spoken today, so I'm glad to see there are quite a few of us still left in the House. I will try to go through these, and sir, I've always tried to give brief and concise answers. There are times when longer answers are needed, but on 19, the answer would be no. On 41, the answer would be yes. On 83, it simply allows for more debate on the bills. I have always assumed that every member of this body will read the bills before they go to committee. It's always frustrating to me when I'm presenting a bill if I see members kind of flipping through for the first time, or if they ask, well, hey, what does this even do? I mean, please read the bills before you go to committee. I know all of us do that. I'm assuming all of us do that. 5 minutes is plenty of time to give just a summary when all of us have read the material before we go in there and hopefully discussed it with our constituents and the folks that sent us here, our voters. The parliamentary report of order, you would rise, point of order, parliamentary inquiry, then you would come forward, explain what that is to the clerk. So you would be recognized, you would come forward, explain what that is to the clerk. The two leaders would come up here more as just witnesses from both the Republican and Democratic caucuses as to what the question is. The clerk would then find the answer. It's very similar to how this would happen in a courtroom in many circumstances. And then they will announce both the question and the answer to that. I think I covered all your questions. Thank you so very much.
Representative Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I called the question.
Question's been called. Is there objection? There's objection. We're on the board. All those in favor of previous question, vote aye. When the bell rings, those opposed, vote no. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 69, 19 nays.
Previous question prevails. We are voting. All those in favor of adopting the report on the Select Committee of Rules, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 70, 19 nays.
Pursuant to Rule 74, having received a 2/3 vote of the members to which the House is entitled, the report of the Select Committee on Rules is adopted. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Calendars, Mr. Speaker, the House has a consent calendar.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of the consent calendar on third and final consideration, keeping with Rule 50.
Gentlemen, moves passage of the consent calendar, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, any objections been filed?
Mr. Speaker, item 22, House Joint Resolution 699 has been objected to by Chair Lady Littleton.
Anyone seeking recognition on the consent calendar? Can you repeat that, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Item 22, House Joint Resolution 699 has been objected to by Chair Lady Littleton.
All right. Anyone else seeking recognition on the consent calendar? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I did not have an opportunity to consult with the leaders, but for the members, I recognize Ross Williams for his 100th birthday. For those in the Upper Cumberland, I would encourage you to sign on to item number 29, House Joint Resolution 0710. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else seeking recognition? Seeing none. We're voting on the consent calendar. All members in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 89, no nays.
Having received the constitutional majority, I declare the consent calendar passed. I object to motion to reconsider table. Let the record reflect Representative Powers is excused. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a regular calendar.
Mr. Clerk, call the first bill.
House Bill 1030 by Speaker Sexton and Chairman Doggett.
Leader Lambert. Oh, Chairman Doggett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Bill 1030 be re-referred to the Criminal Justice Committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Call up the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Speaker, that completes the regular calendar.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business. Representative Dixie, you're recognized.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, I move that the rules be suspended for immediate consideration of SJR number 812.
Mr. Clerk, read the caption.
Senate Joint Resolution 812 by Representative Dixie, a resolution to honor the memory of Shirley A. Pierre Auguste.
You've heard the caption. Any objections? Without objection, the rules are suspended. Representative Dixie.
I move to concur with HJR number 812.
Representative Dixie moves to concur in Senate Joint Resolution 812, properly seconded. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. I declare concurred in without objection. Motion to reconsider is tabled. Representative Moon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw House Bill 1696 from the committee in the House.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that HJR 699 be placed on the consent calendar for Wednesday, January the 17th.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Announcements.
Announcements. Representative Bricken, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In welcoming and honoring, I failed to recognize a civic leader who died last week in our district, and his name was Mike Niederhauser. And Mike was a unique individual, quite a public servant. In fact, he has the distinction of being president of 3 Chamber of Commerces from 3 different cities, McMinnville, Manchester, and Tullahoma. He was so active in our community, he died of cancer at too young of age. So Mike Niederhauser, again, a great leader in our district and will be sorely missed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to remind the members of the Democratic Caucus we will be having a caucus meeting immediately following this floor session in conference room 5C. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Important announcement. Ties for Turns will be taking place in a few weeks. If you got ties you want to donate, feel free to drop them off here at the desk or bring them to Office 419. We'll gladly accept them. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you, my colleagues, for voting on a resolution honoring the birthday of a dear friend, Ms. Joan Baez, who turned 83 yesterday and who's watching these proceedings. I got to spend New Year's with Ms. Joan Baez, and she taught me the words of this song, a Bob Dylan song from 1964 that I wanted to share. I just think it's a beautiful song. It's also the anniversary this year, being the 60th anniversary, and it's called The Times They Are Changing. She said, "Come, senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorways, don't block up the hall. For he that gets hurt will be he that has stalled. The battle outside is raging. Will soon shake your windows and rattle your walls, for the times they are a-changing. Come, mothers and fathers throughout the land, and don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the new one if you can't lend a hand, for the times they are a-changing." Happy birthday, Ms. Joan Baez, and happy birthday all those who stand for the times they are changing.
Representative Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House Finance Committee will continue our hearings today. We will start at 11 o'clock in House Hearing Room 1. Thank you.
Representative Sparks, I see you grabbed your microphone.
Yeah, thank you, speakers. We've got a history event this Saturday at an old community called Old Jefferson, right outside of Smyrna. It was the county seat. The Trail of Tears came through the old community. Samson Keeble was born out there. A lot of history. The federal government speaker moved everyone out of that community due to the Percy Priest Lake being dammed. For more information, contact Sam Davis Home, Roger Thomas. We're going to gather near the East Fork Boat Ramp, Buckeye Bottom Road in Rutherford County at 9 o'clock for a tour of the Old Jefferson community. Thank you, members.
Anyone else wishing to be recognized? Representative Jones, for what purpose?
I forgot to mention that the Progressive Caucus will be meeting today, this afternoon, and so the Progressive Caucus will be meeting in Cordell Hall building for any of you who would like to attend.
There is no Progressive Caucus. You have to work through the process to have a caucus. So, Representative Leatherwood, you're recognized.
Thank you. I would like to announce to Representative Doggett, as well as the other members of the body here, that when they find themselves in a circumstance of a prolonged labor, that they might want to do what I did, which was ordered pizza at the hospital and had that off to the side during the process. Thank you.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Roll call.
Roll call. Ms. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 89 members present.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
That completes the regular order, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until 9 a.m. on Thursday, January 11th, 2024.
Without objection, the House stands in recess till 9 a.m. on Thursday, January 11th, 2024.